Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at something that I don't really like to talk about, but I feel like this is quite an extreme example and it's really left a bad taste in my mouth. So I want to give out I do want to talk about this, even though beauty privilege is not something that I really want to touch on too heavily in these types of videos. Essentially what I'm talking about is the sentencing of Cameron Herron, who, if you're not familiar with the story, he was sentenced quite recently, even though in 2018, which is when the crime took place, he was caught illegal street racing at extreme speeds, and he lost control and killed a mother and their child. All very gruesome things, all very distasteful, but that's not what makes the whole story so again, distasteful for me, is that after the sentencing, all of these fangirls came out of the woodworks to defend Cameron for his actions, and that's what we're going to be looking at really today. So the crime happened. I'm not a criminal prosecuting lawyer. I'm not going to be talking about the details of the crime itself, but I'm going to be talking about more of the psychological aspect of what we're seeing here in this type of hybristophilia, so the attraction to distasteful crimes, essentially, attraction to danger. We made a video on hybristophilia with what's his name? Ramirez. I can't remember his first name. The Netflix, in response to the Netflix documentary that was made just a few days before that video. But, Richard Ramirez. Yep. So that was Richard Ramirez, a great example. A lot of people came out of the woodworks after he was found as the serial killer, and they started supporting him in court. One even married him after hearing about his crimes. And this is a great example of how beauty privilege has played such an integral role in the court and in the local justice system, and how it can influence the outcome of a person's prosecution. So what I'm going to do, the way I'm going to structure this video, I'm going to start off by explaining the details of the case, just to give you some context, and then we'll look at the TikTok videos. We'll talk about it, but it's just something that kind of makes me just uncomfortable to talk about. So I'll try my best. All right. Tampa, Florida. I think that's Florida. Cameron Herron, the 18-year-old man who was behind the wheel of a Ford Mustang that hit and killed a mother and her baby on Bayshore Boulevard in 2018, was sentenced to 24 years in prison Thursday evening. Herron and another man, John Barrineau, are accused of racing at the time of the deadly crash. Barrineau has also pleaded guilty and is serving a 6-year prison sentence. I do want to touch on something just very quickly here. How many of you knew what the name of the other guy was? Because I knew about Cameron Herron's name like a while ago, just because of all the TikToks that were showing up on my For You page. But how many of you knew who the other guy was? Do you want to know why that's the case? Well, if you look here, just tell me which one's the most attractive looking dude, and tell me which one you've heard of. It's no coincidence that you've never heard of John Barrineau, because no one's making fangirl edits of John's sentencing. Tristan was the brother of Cameron, who was in the car at the time, but he wasn't sentenced because he was a passenger and Cameron was the one driving. John, on the other hand, will just likely rot in jail because he's just not attractive. I'm saying it very bluntly here. People are making appeal cases. They're making they're writing letters to the prosecutor for clemency and what's that other word? Amnesty on behalf of Cameron. But no one is talking about John because you've never even heard of his name. And Tristan, Cameron's older brother, is nowhere to be heard of either. And it's no coincidence that Cameron is the best looking one of the three perpetrators. I'm just saying. Okay, let's continue on. Herron and another manager. Okay, this crime took two beautiful lives and left 4 families broken, said the state attorney. No sentence can repair that damage or bring back the lives lost, but we hope this outcome delivers some comfort and closure for Jessica and Lydia's families. Now, I do want to touch on something. In the court sentencing of Cameron, the father who was the father of the deceased child essentially pleaded for the maximum sentencing of 30 years. And it's important to note that Cameron actually had 4 previous warnings, I believe, for illegal street racing and speeding and just general reckless driving. But I mean, on one hand, I do feel bad for him because I can see myself in his shoes. But on the other hand, he's done the crime. He has to do the time now. Anyway, on Tuesday, Herron and his family spent the first half of the morning painting him as caregiving, forgivable, with no intent to hurt anyone. They called what happened that day in May a tragic accident. Here's the thing about speed-related crimes. It doesn't matter if it's an accident. It doesn't matter if it's intentional. In sentencing, there's the actus rea and the mens rea. The act of doing the crime and the mens rea, as in the intention to do the crime. This is essentially manslaughter. When you drive dangerously or you go to excessive speeds, it's almost as if you've made that intention to kill someone. So it doesn't matter whether you had the intention to do it or not. The act itself has made the intention. The act of you putting your foot down on the accelerator and going to that speed is you putting your intention down that you're going to kill someone, right? So it doesn't really matter. I don't know if he was charged for manslaughter or second-degree murder, or it would be first-degree murder in this case, but it doesn't really matter. And the sentencing for this was 30 years. I think the judge did show some leniency and gave him 24 years, despite his previous warnings for speeding. So it's not like they threw the book at him completely. And I would question that if he looked any different, maybe if he looked like this or this, would he have gotten the full 30 years? I question that, because we've seen this multiple times in multiple sentencing cases. The looks of the defendant do influence the outcome of their sentencing. Anyway, I tried to keep things moving. I'll try to keep things short for this video. Essentially nothing more here. I've explained the general idea of the case. How could he do something so stupid? He's a bright kid, said Dr. Mayer, a forensic psychiatrist who met with Herron professionally 30 to 40 times. It is because the stop and think part of the brain, the frontal lobe, where we stop and think about our actions, is not developed. I will agree. I do quite agree with that. He was 18 at the time, and I don't know how many of you were 18. All of you were 18 eventually at some point of your life. But you 18-year-olds are pretty dumb. And when you give an 18-year-old a Ford Mustang, I'm assuming it's a V8, it's 500 horsepower. Like I said, I have a Mustang. I know exactly what it's like when you have that much power at a young age. I understand what happened, but I don't excuse what happened because he's got previous, not convictions, I have to be careful using that word, but he's got previous warnings, and the behavior itself is reckless. So when you speed like that, you understand in some part of your brain, you understand that if you kill someone, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to go to jail. And he probably knew that, and he still did it regardless. Before we get into the TikTok edits of Cameron and the fangirl edits and whatnot, I just want to make a few comments about the details of the crash. So what we see here, it's a black Mustang. It's a 2018 model plus or onwards, because it doesn't have the fog lights, which also means that the car is a bit lower. I'm also going to assume it's a V8 because it doesn't really make sense to get an EcoBoost Mustang, which is not a V8. So it has more power than the average Mustang. It's a higher trim level. And so all of these factors make for a very dangerous car for an 18-year-old to be given as his graduation present. I personally have this exact car in this exact color, in this exact model. And what happens is it's a rear-wheel drive car. And so when you tend to go to a certain speed, since the car is very heavy, you don't really notice how fast you're going. And he was going at around 100 miles per hour, which is 160 kilometers per hour, which is absolutely insane for a suburban street like this. And also he's doing it in broad daylight, which is also just equally as insane because this car is very loud. So even if the police don't catch you, I'm sure somebody's gonna record what you're doing and like post it up somewhere, and you're just gonna get your number plates run through or something. It's just pure stupidity. It really doesn't make any sense to me why he's doing any of this in a suburban street with how narrow the roads are too. But my guess is, in the news reports, they're saying that he lost control. I doubt that's what actually happened, because with the newer versions of the cars, they're lower, they have better aerodynamics, they have traction control. it's not that he lost control, it's rather that the lady stepped out in front of the car, because it's a suburban street. And so you can see where the damage hit, and my guess is she rolled up onto the hood because of how low the car is. One of the issues with the front grille of this car is that this lip here is actually very rigid. And so what happens is it has the tendency to kind of slice through people. Obviously, I'm not saying that's what happened, but this is what happened with the Camaro sales. Because if you want to get a Camaro in Australia, this front grille and this lip is so sharp that the government just said, nope, that's going to slice through people. It's too dangerous. And there was a whole back and forth about it. It was a big deal. And so that's kind of why Camaros are hard to come by in Australia, or even in Europe. Same deal, but that's more for fuel efficiency and whatnot. But either way, my point is, my guess is that he tried to slow down. And when you're going 160, I'm guessing you probably slowed down to 100 and hit her at 100 kilometers per hour, which for the Americans should be 60 miles per hour, if my maths is correct. And the impact was enough to roll her off onto the hood and then off. And she probably hit her head on the pavement or something hard, and that's probably how she died. And then if you see the stroller itself, the pram, it doesn't have a whole lot of damage to it, so I'm not too sure what happened there. But all in all, this is just pure stupidity. And the fact that they gave this to an 18-year-old, the car itself is mid-range. It's not that expensive, but it's not that cheap either. In Australia, it's quite expensive because of the import tax and whatnot. In America, I'm not too sure. I think it's around 50,000 USD for a model of this, for like a 2018 plus model. So this kid's definitely from privilege. Don't get it twisted in any way. He's purely privileged. This is the result of privilege. You can see the privilege in his face during the sentencing. I don't know how people fail to recognize that. I just wanted to make that the main point of this segment. Anyway, let's look at some of the fun part of this video. It's not fun. This whole video is just depressing. I hate that. I hate that they're infantilizing Cameron's character as a lovable and forgivable person with a cute face. He deserves a second chance. Well, no. If I kill someone, even if I'm 18, I still have to do almost 1 or 2 life sentences. That's how it works in Australia. I don't know how it works in America, but it doesn't matter whether I kill him with a car, with a knife, with a gun. It makes no difference. The fact that their arguments, the fangirls' arguments, the people defending him, is that since it was done with the car, it was less different. There was less intention to kill someone. It was an accident. It doesn't matter. Like I explained, once you go past a certain speed limit, you've made the intention to kill someone. 24 years is actually about right. So I think the judge, looking at the precedent of similar cases, and I believe I was going to make an example, but if I can't find it, then we'll just skip that part. But looking at the precedents of similar cases, it is not that far off. And I think the judge has done a good job with the sentencing. You could throw the book at him, but what difference does it make at that point? It's basically the good part of his life gone. And if that doesn't teach him, nothing will. Here's one of the support pages, the fan pages for Mr. Cameron. And why don't we watch it? I have to ask, what the hell happened with this family tree? What happened to the brother? I'm just being real. What happened? How did he get this and he didn't? I don't know. Genetics are cruel. It's like, oh, look at him. He's drinking water. Like, he's like us. He's just like us. Look at what he's doing. Oh, it's so normal. The way that these videos are created, it's very deliberate. And I don't know if you know how lawyers recommend to their clients, oh, when you're walking to the courtroom, when you're walking out of the courtroom, do this and do that to improve your PR relations and make you seem more lovable and forgivable. A great example is when Harvey Weinstein was sentenced, and I'm going completely off memory. I believe he used a cane, even though he never needed a cane or a walking aid. So he seems like, oh, I'm Harvey Weinstein with the walking aid. Could I have possibly done these horrible things to these women? No, of course not, because I'm using a walking aid. I'm barely alive. It's very similar. This is kind of the vibe that I'm getting from these videos. Obviously, no lawyer made them, but the girls that are making these, and I assume they're fangirls, the people that are making these videos understand how to portray his character in the most positive light. And that's why there's clips of him with his family. There's clips of him drinking water, which is a seemingly benign thing to show. But it's very important to keep in mind. And these are things you'd use in like filmmaking and content creation just to change the general atmosphere of the clip.
Hey!
Mama!
Hey!
What the fuck? It's just repeats of the same clip. I get you get the idea. Okay, it's just repeats of the same clips. Because I'm guessing that's all the clips. That's all they know about him. They don't seem like very good fangirls if they don't know any more than that. But it's just repeats of the same clips and they're edited in different ways to make him seem like, how could he have done this? And he just seems like a regular dude. And 18-year-olds make mistakes, but anyway, we're looking at the case of Hybristophilia. So I did remember, I was going to show a TikTok video with this particular girl. I don't remember her name, but she was also a great modern day example of Hybristophilia. We already covered Richard Ramirez, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. And anyway, let's see. He was sentenced to 24 years in prison, 3 years after the incident occurred because of his crime, but his good looks apparently left people drooling and sparked sympathy among his fans. Many called out the disgusting remarks by certain commenters on TikTok that overlooked the crime he did simply because of his good looks. TikTok people are sick. I agree. We've already seen all of those videos. Another netizen on Twitter in her post commented, "I cannot believe that some people are justifying what Cameron did because he's handsome. I don't understand why you're glamorizing crimes now. Cameron will return to his family after 24 years, but Jessica and Lilia will never come back, so he deserves more time in jail." And this is a great... Richard Ramirez is honestly the best example of this type of hybristophilia. He had more fangirls than anyone else, if I remember correctly, more than Ted Bundy or Dahmer. And it's no coincidence. We actually looked at Richard Ramirez's face in a lot of detail in that particular video, but he has very similar features to Cameron, such as having a strong jaw and, more importantly, having really dark and thick eyebrows. If you see with Cameron, his eyebrows go to the ends of his face and they don't taper off as nearly as much as John or his brother Tristan, and they're also very dark and thick, which provides a lot of contrast, especially if you have a very pale face. That's one of the big differences with Tristan, his supposed brother, who honestly just doesn't look anything like him at all. Where if you compare the noses, they're drastically different shapes, their mouths are different, their facial widths and dimensions are different. It could be that their hairlines are similar, and that's probably why Cameron wears the bangs and whatever. But they just look very different, and it's hard to tell that they're brothers. Honestly, I don't see it. Regardless, John... The reason why John probably didn't get fangirls after him is because he has very defined supraorbital ridges, which does make him look a bit bony and a bit, well, I hate to say a bit like a Neanderthal. And also his nose is quite wide and bulbous, which throws off his spatial proportion. So, the transverse rule of fifths proportion, which does make his eyes look a bit smaller. Whereas if you compare it to Cameron's, who has very balanced proportions, his eyes look a lot larger, even though they're probably likely the same size. So all of this is relative, and that's one of the reasons why Cameron just looks better than the other two, and that's probably why he's getting people fangirling over him, and his life is still benefiting from pretty privilege, despite the heinous gravity of his crimes. Right? So imagine if it was John that did the same thing, or his brother Tristan. I really doubt the results would be the same, and I expect them to be much more severe, because we know for a fact this isn't conjecture. This isn't me saying something out of spite or just making it up. being attractive is a huge benefit. And so this really isn't a question of privilege as in white versus black, but rather a privilege of attractive versus unattractive. And a quick side note, follow us on TikTok. We have a new content creator, it's a new account. We have a lot of new content coming out that's specifically made for TikTok. So if you're not following it, follow us there. It's different content. It's nothing like the stuff on YouTube. It's very TikTok specific. I quite enjoy TikTok, so I think it's a great way of talking about some of the things you see on TikTok. And this entire video on Cameron Herron is a very TikTok unique problem. I haven't really seen YouTube edits of Cameron Herron, but it seems to be very prevalent on TikTok because people just say whatever they feel like. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Food for thought. Follow us there.